What's one belief about hormone health that medicine needs to dismantle, and what would replace it?
Hormones do not cause cancer. Hormones done correctly with the proper dosages actually prolong longevity. They decrease morbidity and mortality. They decrease disease because hormones do not cause cancer. It's the way your body metabolizes those hormones and that terrain that causes cancer.
It turns out that your gut and your hormones are having a conversation all day long, and no one is listening to it. Dr. Cassie Smith is a dual board certified endocrinologist who founded Modern Endocrine and serves as CMO of Renithroid, and she built her entire medical practice around that connection. She also wrote Fix Your Gut, Fix Your Hormones, because she believed the future of endocrinology isn't just about adjusting levels. It's about understanding why they shifted in the first place. And more often than not, the answer starts in your GI system, in the digestive system. In this episode, we're getting into how your gut became the control center for your metabolism, your thyroid, and your hormonal health, and what it actually looks like to treat the root cause instead of the symptom, and why this connection is changing how we think about everything from weight gain to fatigue to brain fog. Welcome to the Medical Disruptor, a place where well-versed humans can ask the hard questions and get evidence-based answers you won't find anywhere else. Every guest on the show must be clinically trained. MDs, NPs, DOs, PAs, and researchers who want more and expand beyond their conventional training to find deeper answers for complex health challenges. I'm Dr. E, the NP with a PhD, and I help smart, well-versed humans go from medically gaslit to medically empowered. Dr. Cassie Smith, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So here's the scoop. You trained at Harold Ham. You were named chief resident. You did the clinical trials. And then you left conventional endocrinology and built your own practice from scratch in 2020. What were you seeing in your patients or in the system at the time when you were like, you know what? I got it. I'm chief resident. I'm doing clinical trials, but something's not right. What was the moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were so many, right? Like I went into medicine to help people. I've always had the desire and the passion to be like, what is actually wrong with you and how do I make you better? And I went through traditional training. I spent all this time learning. I did exactly what they told me in school. I went to additional fellowship training. I'm like, by the book, I'm going to do exactly what you're supposed to. And then I get out of training after like, what is that? 6, 9, 10, 12 years of higher education. And I did what I was supposed to for 2 years. And what I found was it was miserable for myself and for patients because I got to spend 15 minutes with them, which doesn't even give you enough time to listen to half of their symptoms and go over their medications. And then in that 15 minutes of time, I realized, wow, these people are developing more symptoms. They're actually sicker. And then I'm trying to like write them a medication to try to fix all the symptoms they have. And then they come back 3 months later and they're sicker and they've gained more weight. And I was so frustrated in the fact that nobody came to me and was like, wow, I feel better. And I'm just hammering them with more medications and, more, and then they get more side effects and it costs more money. And I just got to a point where I came home and told my husband, I was like, I really thought I was going to make people better and people were going to come in and say, wow, I feel better. And it never happened, like ever. And, in traditional medicine, you're seeing like 24 people a day. And so I'm batting like 0 for 24, 5 days a week. And it just wears on you, right? You're like, damn, I just want to make somebody feel better. And so I just was like, something is not right here. Something is not right that I'm doing everything that I learned and nobody's getting better. And so that's when the light bulb went on for me. I was like, why? And when I started reading and learning about the gut and learning about different things, it's like, well, how am I ever going to talk to somebody about their sleep and how they're feeling in their gut in 15 minutes? And so when I approached the hospital staff about that, they're like, yeah, no, that's actually, we were going to talk to you about cutting your appointments to 10 minutes because you've been here for 2 years and you have a wait list. And I'm like, it's not going to work.
Yes.
For me.
So how did it come about, right? So you're studying all this. How did you get to the fact that the gut has something to do with this? How did you stumble upon this?
So I was sick for a long time too, right? I developed autoimmune disease in med school. So I developed Graves' disease. And I was just like, oh, okay, whatever, seeing an endocrinologist. Part of the reason I went into endocrinology was, put on medications, was told there was nothing you could really do to change it. And I believed that. I had the medical gaslighting to myself from doctors, like, hey, I don't feel well, asking questions. And they didn't have the tools to give me the right answers. And so I kind of had my own medical journey for years where I was like, I don't think this is right. I'm not better, but I never really did anything about it because I trusted doctors, right? Well, I finally got to the point where when I was out of school and my patients weren't getting better and I wasn't getting better, I was like, why? Why? I've done everything I'm supposed to. Like, why do my antibodies keep going up? Why do I need more medication? Why do I keep getting sicker? Why do my autoimmune diseases keep compounding? Right? I went from Graves to Hashimoto's. And then all of a sudden I had insulin resistance, even though I only weighed 120 pounds. And then I started having irregular menstrual cycles. And then they're like, oh, you have PCOS. And it just kept like, I was like, what the, and so I had so many questions. So I just started kind of researching for myself. And so that's what really started my journey of like making myself better. But then I was like, well, this is what's going on with all my patients too. Right. And so I think it was this like myself trying to figure out what's going on with myself and then my patients. And then I'll never forget, I left Mercy Hospital right before COVID, like the worst time ever in the last century to start a private practice. I started my private practice on March 1st, 2020.
God bless.
It was awesome. But I left on March 1st, 2020. And I'll never forget, like June, July rolls around, right? And like talk about my cortisol and everything just being a nightmare. But people were coming back to me even after one visit and they were like, I'm starting to feel better. And these were patients. I was lucky enough that a lot of my patients left traditional medicine with me. Like I was very blessed that they're like, okay, well, let me follow you. And like, I guess we've trusted you for 3 years. And so I was just making little changes just with like giving people D3 or fixing their gut or talking to them about sleeping. And in June or July that year, the world was a mess then. I don't know if you remember, but the world was a mess.
I remember very well.
People were coming in, they're like, Dr. Cassie, I feel better. And I'm like, you do? And it might only been like 5 or 6 a day, but it was 5 or 6 out of 20. And then by December of that year, it was 10. And it was just like, people were getting better. And I was like, okay, so then I just kept like digging. Okay, well, what else do we need to do? What else do we need to do? And, now I saw 10 people today and I'm not exaggerating. All 10 of them felt better. And it's so rewarding and better.
So rewarding.
Better.
It's so rewarding. Before I continue more into the science of what you do, you made some really interesting points that I want to surface. First is that here you are, a doctor at the time, going back to the story that you told, a doctor in the system, and you experienced medical gaslighting. And I know you and I have spoken, I was privileged enough to be on your show. We both know that when we say medical gaslighting, we don't think our colleagues are these evil, mean people who are purposely gaslighting, right? But tell me so that our listeners can understand, how is it possible for a doctor to be medically gaslit? What does that mean? How did that happen to you?
Yeah. Looking back, I think that so I'm an endocrinologist sitting in an endocrinologist's office and I'm saying, hey, I don't think something's right. My hair's falling out. I don't have eyebrows. My skin is thin, and they say, well, you work too much, just like me. You're working too hard. You're not taking good care of yourself. Your sleep cycles are messed up because of residency fellowship, just things like that. And you're like, okay, well, maybe that's right. But, I got to the point where I was like, but no, because I am sleeping well now and I am seeing the sun and I am eating better. But it wasn't malicious, like you say, It wasn't like they were being mean. It was just like, it's almost like they just expect their patients to feel bad. And so when you do have a symptoms, it's like, well, that's just part of the disease process, right? And they almost try to make you feel like you're the problem. And so I was just like, okay, well, I guess maybe that is true, right? And then I just kind of got to the point where I'm like, but I have labs that show that maybe this isn't optimal. And I have every symptom that this gland is not working correctly, And so, but then I quickly realized that you're not going to get, and some of these were colleagues of mine. You're not going to go anywhere with these people because they did the same training I did and they haven't been reading hundreds of articles for months and years now. And they're just, when I would say something to them about, hey, well, I think my gut or my diet may be affecting my Hashimoto's, or maybe they just looked at me like I was from outer space. And
outer space.
Yeah, I
100%.
guess I'm asking a plumber how
Yeah.
to,
Yep.
fix my leaky roof
Electric.
and my
Oh, nice.
electrical.
You remember the metaphor. I love
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I want listeners to hear this, that as you were describing this, not only were you gaslit, but before you found your voice and said, no, I'm doubling down, there was a moment in time where you doubted yourself and you're like, oh, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe, maybe it is my stress. It is my sleep. And it took time for you to be like, but wait, I am sleeping. And like, I imagine that a listener is saying, okay, I do this to myself all the time. And if a doctor does that to herself, how much harder is it for a layperson who doesn't have that confidence to do that? And it's just amazing to know. We had a similar situation, my wife and I, right? It's like we're both in the system for so long. I was like, there's nothing you could do for your autoimmune, there's nothing you could do. We're like, okay, see you next year. Until we got to something. So thank you so much for sharing that, because our listeners need to hear that. Because, we have our patients who are walking with everything you said, fatigue, the bloating, the waking, the brain fog, the anxiety, and they check the labs and they say everything's fine, and nobody checks the gut. What does the gut have to do with it?
I mean, so many things, but I want to make another point to what you said, Dr. E. Like, if you're listening
Please.
to this, I mean, gosh, I was medically gaslit and didn't listen to myself for probably 12 years. Like, it was.
Whoa, I didn't realize it was 12 years.
And so I feel like people need to understand that too. I was in residency and medical. So I was in medical school, then residency, then fellowship. Throughout that whole time, I was like, okay, yeah, you're probably right. I'm probably not eating great. I'm probably not. And then I was a faculty, and and now I'm working, and it was a long time. And so it wasn't just like, but I started to realize, like, hey, no matter what I say to these people, and I even got different doctors, they're saying the same thing. And I'm actually making changes and nothing is changing. And I mean, I got to the point where I was almost like, felt debilitated, like disabled.
Yeah.
I was so tired. And I'm like, but it shouldn't be like this. So if you are listening to your point, I mean, even as an endocrinologist, I was like, I allowed, it's one of the probably the biggest mistakes of my life. I let somebody really dictate how something that I knew was wrong in my gut for at least 3 to 5 years when I really, really knew better. But I was like, they're a doctor and, they mean well and they're doing what they're supposed to. And my biggest regret of that is like, hey, when you let somebody do that for years, you get a lot sicker. And by the time I really took control of my health and tried to turn it around, man, it's been a uphill battle for 6+ years now. And I'm better, but like, if I would have listened to myself, when I turned 30, it would have been a lot easier. So I think that people really need to hear that. Like, don't ever let somebody, when in your gut something's wrong, don't let them talk yourself out of it, right? And know that as an endocrinologist, I let other endocrinologists talk me out of it for years.
Wow. That is huge. It's huge because there's two parts there. One, we as patients all have come to trust the numbers over our own body. The numbers are fine. We're like, well, then I must be fine. I must be very dramatic. That's number one. And number two is this part that's just like, it kills me, is like, when we feel something in our body, or we notice something in our kids, we notice it, but it doesn't count. But what actually is happening is something called pattern recognition. We are noticing that something's off. But interestingly, in male-dominated fields like a pilot, a firefighter, financial, if they notice something's off, that's considered a skill. Oh, he saw it coming, right? He had this intuition, he has a sixth sense. But when we do it to ourselves or for our children, it's like you're being sensitive, you're being dramatic. But it's the same skill of pattern recognition. And to the amount of gaslighting that has to happen for you to even as a doctor, for you to have that, to go home and doubt yourself is just wild. It's like institutionalized how much we second guess ourselves as women, as moms, as caretakers. So I'm so happy you shared that part of your story.
Yeah, and it's so true. And so then to bring it back to your question, why does the gut matter? I mean, let's start with the fact that you do have a second brain in your gut, right? You really do. I mean, they say your second brain is your gut. Our gut is connected to the rest of our body by something called our vagus nerve, which is kind of like our second brain. And not to make this too scientific, but you basically have innervation from a nervous system in your gut that talks to the rest of your entire body through your gut. And it's, I tell people it's kind of like the Wi-Fi router of your body. It lives in your gut. We have 100 times more DNA in our gut than we do in the rest of our entire body. Right. And
Amazing.
so it's crazy to think you can fix someone without looking at their gut. But those feelings, those symptoms, there's something's off, that all those things that you sense, that you feel, but then get dampened by somebody telling you this or what you see on social media or all the inputs that you're getting. I mean, your gut is so powerful because it is sensing everything that your body is taking in, everything you hear, everything you say to yourself, everything you feel, everything you internalize and think, every organ in your body is innervated and giving signals to your vagus nerve, which then goes back to, your gut is then, because your gut is so important with turning hormones into active hormones. So like our hormones are made in organs in our body, right? So our brain, our hypothalamus releases hormones that tells our organs in our body, hey, I need you to make thyroid hormone. Hey, I need you to make estrogen. I need you to make progesterone. I need you to make growth hormone. Like it's all regulated from our pituitary. We drop a hormone, it goes to an actual organ in our body, and then it makes that hormone by a signal. But just because that hormone is made by that organ doesn't mean that hormone is ready to work. A lot of times those hormones leave that gland and then they have to be activated somewhere in our body, right? They have to have enzymes or they have to have nutrients or they have to have different things that turn the hormone on before it can be accepted into our cells. Most of that happens in your gut or by way of micronutrients that are absorbed by your gut or by way of other hormones that are made in your gut. And so when your gut doesn't work, that whole process breaks down. And nobody taught, here's another important thing. I have a metabolism degree, right? So I'm an endocrinologist with an endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism fellowship from a very prestigious university in the United States. One of the, we're the best medical training in the world. So I have a metabolism degree and I wasn't taught anything about the gut.
That's wild. That's right? Absolutely wild.
I mean,
that's wild.
Just factual.
That's crazy. So no wonder, I know one of your talking points is that you challenge the idea that normal labs equals good health. And that makes sense, right? Because if we're talking about so much is happening in the gut, 70% of our immune system is in the gut, and you're going in with thyroid symptoms, and even if you're getting the full thyroid panel, your PCB is great, they did T3, T4. If they're not looking at your gut, and as far as I know, there's never been in conventional medicine any gut conversations in the thyroid thing. So we could see patients who are clearly not well, and their labs are great. So what do you do? I mean, like, how does that land? What do you do when you see that?
Yes, in traditional medicine, we never talk about the gut. But also, if you're listening to this podcast, think about this. When is the last time your primary care talked to you about how often you go poop? Right? Like that's an easy question. Never. Right? Yeah. So like your doctor should be asking you every time they see you, do you have a bowel movement every day? Or how many times a day do you have a bowel movement? And what does it look like? And if they've never asked you that, I mean, think about this. We pile nutrients into our mouth all day long, way too much in this country, but nobody talks about how it comes out. I mean, it's just very basic. Like
everyone's constipated.
Know this, right? And so like if you're constipated, then we need to figure out why, because if we're putting stuff in and it's not coming out, obviously, again, there's going to be a traffic jam. There's going to be issues. So that's one thing that like, I don't understand this at all. And then if you are lucky enough that your doctor's brought this up or you're like, hey, I'm constipated, their reaction or response is likely Miralax or Cinna. And I'm going to promise you that you don't have a Miralax or a Cinna deficiency. You have root cause issues that need to be addressed. So that's one thing that's just really, really frustrating, right? And then secondly, again, from a gut perspective, like my patients now, I tell them, hey, I'm happy to look at your labs. I'm happy to see whether they're normal or not normal. But if you have symptoms of a hormone deficiency and your labs, even if they are considered normal, that doesn't mean they're optimal for you, right? I think it's really important that people understand, what does normal mean, right? In a lab, normal means they took 100 people who are adults and they took their blood levels and they lined them up from lowest to highest. And then they took the top 2.5% and the bottom 2.5% and they cut them out. And then they said, okay, everything in the middle is normal. But like, were those people they looked at really normal? Were they really healthy? And so normal kind of means nothing to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The more I learn
absence of disease.
Yeah. The more I learn about labs, the more I'm like, this is insane, and so that's what normal means. Does that mean it's optimal for you? No.
So on the one hand, we're talking about these patients who are normal but don't feel well. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, another point that you made is that sometimes we overtreat lab values and undertreat the symptoms, right? And understanding why. Can you explain what that means?
Quick little break. If this episode is hitting home, you need this. I made a free guide called the 5 red flag phrases that signal medical gaslighting. Because if you know what to listen for, you'll know when to push back. Politely, of course. Check out the link in the description. Now let's keep going.
Yeah. And I think part of that is why I wrote my book. So here's the thing. When doctors just treat labs, right? They only treat a lab and they're trying to maybe push more hormone, or they say, hey, your lab looks fine. You don't need more hormone. What you have to understand is when you check a blood level of a hormone, right? You're pulling like, hey, what level of this hormone is in the blood? That by no means correlates with how much of that hormone gets into a cell and actually affects the cell. Because remember, a hormone by definition is something that is made in a gland in our body that then travels to another cell and exerts its action or function in another cell of our body, in a distant gland. So that hormone has to be made by our thyroid, has to be converted into active thyroid hormone in our gut and other places, and then actually has to go into a cell to work. It has to be taken into our heart or taken into our skin or taken into a cell to actually work. So when you get a blood level of somebody's hormone blood level, great, that hormone's circulating. Does that mean that hormone went into the cell and is actually working? No. There's no way to check intracellular hormone levels in people yet. I hope there will be one day, because then all these millions of people who are actually feeling like crap and hypothyroid will be validated instantly. Like, oh, you don't have any T3 in your cell. No kidding. I mean, like, you weren't lying. No kidding.
No kidding.
So the thing is, the blood test isn't the end all be all, because although the hormone's there, that doesn't mean the hormone can get into the cell. And that's what a lot of my book is about. Why do we have hormones that then won't go into cells? Well, the reason is inflammation. Well, where does inflammation come from? From high insulin, from being stressed out, from high cortisol, from having gut dysfunction, from not sleeping well, from having poor circadian rhythm, from feeling stressed out, from not knowing where your next meal is going to come from too much dinging on your phone. So there's so many things that cause your cell membranes to be inflamed and hormones to not be able to be taken into cells. So this is part of the reason millions of people have normal labs, but they have every symptom of hypothyroidism, because that T3 is in the blood, but it never got into the cell to exert its function. So you're going to feel that, right?
That's a really good point. Like, just because it's in the blood doesn't mean it's going where it needs to go. That's a really good point. Oh. So you also test with, some of our listeners will be familiar with these tests. You test with a GI map, you do SIBO panels, you do food sensitivity panels, along with the hormone panels. Yeah. What's like a common theme that you're finding in the gut that explains some of these hormonal symptoms that no conventional medicine is not seeing?
I mean, there are so many things in the gut, Dr. E. Most people have they have a lot of dysbiosis in their gut. So they have a lot of bad bacteria that are overgrowing and a lot of good bacteria that are undergrowing, which will cause inflammation, right? A lot of people have dysfunction in the way that they're absorbing their nutrients. So a lot of people are not absorbing carbohydrates, proteins, and fats correctly, which then leave you micronutrient deficient. So even though you're eating all this food and taking all these supplements, if you can't absorb them, doesn't matter, pooping them out, you need a lot of these micronutrients in order for your hormones to work. So if you're eating iron or you're eating zinc or selenium or, B vitamins, but you can't actually absorb them because your gut, the cells in your gut that absorb them can't function because you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria or a parasite or yeast, then again, you're not getting the micronutrients you need. And then those micronutrients that are needed to activate hormones aren't working, right? So I see a lot of that. I see a lot of people who have really unhealthy abilities to absorb nutrients from their guts because they have bad bacteria that overgrow. I see a ton of people with low stomach acidity, like they don't have enough acid in their stomach because they're on PPI medications, because they're drinking a lot of caffeine, because they're chronically stressed out. And then that affects how you digest your food. That affects bad bacterial overgrowth. That causes a lot of inflammation, which drives up your insulin, which causes you to gain weight, which drives up your cholesterol or your cortisol, which causes
round and around we go.
Yeah. And then I see a ton of poor immune systems. And this is the worst. Like, this is why we're getting chronic disease and illness. And this is a lot of why I think we're getting cancer in younger people. When your immune system is dysfunctional and your cells in your body start to replicate, turn over, and they mutate or they fold incorrectly, if your immune system is worn out, tired, or dead, it doesn't catch that. And then those cells continue to replicate inappropriately. And then we end up with 30-year-olds with colon cancer. We end up with 30-year-olds with breast cancer. We end up with, because our immune system is trash, right? And a lot of that hormone metabolism and things that happen do it through our gut. And when they don't have outlets to detox and metabolize correctly because our liver and our gut is bad, we end up with problems. And then our immune system doesn't.
A lot of problems.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening, is there, and there may not be, but what can they do inside the conventional medicine framework? Is there questions they need to ask or labs they need to ask for? Because not everyone can go and do all these tests. Is there something that they can do for themselves within the framework?
There are lab tests that you can ask for, right? Like you can just say, hey, I'm really tired and I'm gaining weight and I'm cold. Instead of just checking my TSH, can you check my T4 and my T3? Like I'm just curious. I want to see what they are, right? So there are lab tests that you can ask for. I think that, you could even ask like, hey, could there be something else going on? Should we look at, gut testing? Should we look at my cortisol? I think insulin is something that most doctors like, can we do a fasting insulin and see if that's high and maybe that's why I'm gaining weight? So I think asking for additional lab tests is a good place to start. But I think if at that point your doctor's like, no, you're going to have to start looking for somebody with more tools in their tool belt, because if they won't even check the lab and they're not willing to, talk to you about, or even asking, hey, do you think there's a different diet I could do that would help these symptoms? Or is there something I can do with my exercise? If they're not even willing to have those conversations with you, I'm not sure there's a lot you're going to get from that person, right?
Yeah. And you may not need to necessarily leave that PCP. I always tell people,
no,
you just need to know what you can and can't ask them. Like I have a patient just told me, she's like, I keep my GYN, but I only get pap smears from her. She goes, I get my hormones from my hormone specialist. And I go to my GYN. She said, I don't even tell my GYN I'm on hormones because I don't want the eye roll. I go for the pap smear and that's it. So you can go for your PCP to get your mammograms, get your annuals, whatever you need if you have a cold. And you just don't expect more from them if that's the response. Because I don't want everyone leaving their PCPs, because sometimes in some areas in America, it's pretty hard to find another one. So just know what they can and they can't do. I love that so much. Now, if there's a clinician listening, and I'm always wondering which clinicians are listening, because I always wonder what you're doing on my podcast. Kudos to you if you're here. If you're listening, you should know by now that I'm never attacking my colleagues. It is its own journey. Clinicians are getting to where they need to go is its own journey. But what's the one thing a clinician could do tomorrow in a standard visit, not a functional medicine visit, that could change how they treat their thyroid patients?
Just thyroid? I think just start with...
Or hormone.
No, and I want to say to you too, this is part of the reason I really respect and like you a lot. I agree. Like physicians, I don't ever want to make other physicians feel bad. I really don't believe that anyone goes into medicine and doesn't want to help people, because it's like a terrible... it's not easy to be a physician, right? I think one of the easy things you can do is just validate your patient. So the way I start every visit, and you can ask any patient that's seen me for 12 years, I start every visit with, hey, Sarah, how are you? Can you tell me how you're feeling? because I just want to hear them say, I feel like crap. I feel better. I want to hear it. Like and then I'm like, okay, I hear that you're saying you feel better, but you're still struggling with this, validate your patient. That's like so huge. Start with that, right? Because then they're going to be much more apt to tell you, hey, I have this issue. So I think that's one thing. Ask people how they're feeling and then believe them, and then figure out how can even, in primary care, it's really hard. How can we do one thing to make that better? So if it's, hey, I'm feeling okay, but you realize they're constipated. Are you drinking enough water? Can we add some fiber? Are you exercising? Just try to find one thing that you can help them with. And it doesn't require a prescription pad. It's just common sense, right? To kind of help them know, hey, I hear you. I see you. I want to help you.
I believe
figure this
you.
out, right?
Yeah.
I think that's so validating, because when I was kind of thinking back through my journey and like sort of blamed myself for a little while, and I got really sick for a while, I was like, why didn't I talk to them about all these issues? Well, it's because I never felt seen, validated, or heard. It was always like, oh,
you're
you
crazy.
don't have these issues, you're crazy. And so I think if you can just listen to your patients, and then for God's sakes, believe them. Like, don't think, oh yeah, they're tired, or whatever symptom they're saying. Don't think, oh, well, that's on them. Really believe them
100%.
and say, okay, well, is there something
100%.
physiologically going on that we can fix?
It's funny that you call yourself a recovering conventional medicine. I call myself a recovering medical gaslighter, because for years I did the same thing. That's right. For years I did the same thing and truly felt, I was like, but Mrs. Smith, there's nothing wrong with you. Like I've done everything, right? Like really, truly believe. But you're right. Once you know. So I made the decision. For a while I did functional medicine like you, but I made a decision actually to double down in primary care and stay in the conventional piece with all of its flaws. And it's very flawed and is a very quick appointment. But what I can do there is I can say, I hear you, I see you, I believe you. And then I can also be a conduit for like, but you're in the wrong room. Conventional medicine can't help you. Here are a few places to go look, right? And that's what my website is about also. Like, just go look, go find it, the specialist that you need. If they need thyroid, they'll do thyroid. They'll find Dr. Cassie Smith. So I landed on the fact that someone has to take that stand and be there in the system to help people. And this goes back to what you said to the clinician. Like, you don't have to leave the system, but you just have to be validating. I think that's really, really important. So thank you for saying that. Okay, I have a few more questions here. Next one is like the pushback, right? I have to ask you the pushback because your colleagues still, some of your colleagues are going to say, you're an endocrinologist telling patients that their gut is driving their hormones without any large-scale randomized controlled trials proving that this gut hormone axis is clinically actionable at the individual level. You're taking them off protocol. What do you say to them?
I say to them, with all due respect, I appreciate your concern. I have thousands of patients I've taken care of now for 10 years who followed me from traditional medicine to what I do now. And they keep coming back and they're actually getting better. So although we don't have a study, I actually maybe should do one, because if you follow my patients in their labs and they're, it's just like, I don't know what to tell you other than everyone that comes to see me continues to come back and actually gets better. And when I practiced for 2.5 years in the hospital system, that was not the case. And so I'm going to keep doing what I know is right, because that's, and from a physiologic standpoint, it makes sense. Now, there are some studies out there that talk about the gut, but I'm going to tell you that, again, all I know is what I know, and you can't undo or unsee what I know. And, it's pretty cool. I actually have a couple of new providers and MAs that have been working with me in the last 6 months. And I have a nurse who came to work with me recently. And she said to me today, she's like, man, Dr. Cassie, I have never worked in a clinic where people come in and feel good and have so many nice things to say about you over and over. She's like, I'm not sure what you're doing, and it is different than I've ever done, but it's got to be working.
I love
that's
that
really
so much.
nice to hear, right? She worked in an ER and then she worked in primary care. And then she's like, this is just wild. And so I say to them, people are better. People keep coming back, and I'm changing people's lives. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if you ever want to learn how to do it, I'm happy to teach you.
You know, it's funny. I asked this question of Dr. Bredesen. I'm not familiar with him. He's like the godfather of Alzheimer's and dementia. And he said, ask any neurologist in the world to put in a room all the people that he's reversed dementia on. And I'll bring all the people that I reversed dementia on. And we'll just that will be the study. I was like, that's it. That's it. You're 100% right. I love that so much. Okay. We're going to do a medical disruptor question and then we're going to do rapid fire questions. What's one belief about hormone health that medicine needs to dismantle, and what would replace it?
Oh my God. Estrogen and hormones do not cause cancer. Period. Full stop.
Oh, praise.
Full stop.
Praise.
Also, I mean, there's so many, but hormones do not cause cancer. Hormones done correctly with the proper dosages actually prolong longevity. They decrease morbidity and mortality. They decrease disease. And that is like the hill that I'm going to die on behind. You have to fix somebody's gut to fix their hormones, right? Period. Like, I'm so sick of women suffering because people don't want to give them hormones, because there's so many studies. I give women after breast cancer hormones. I sure do. Hundreds of them. I will, because their heart disease gets better, and they're, so many, I could talk about this forever, but you just have to make sure that hormones are done correctly. Right. And so I'm so sick of the fact that women have suffered for years and they continue to suffer, because hormones do not cause cancer. It's the way your body metabolizes those hormones and that terrain that causes cancer. It's not the hormone. So I'm sick of that.
I tell women all the time, but because sometimes the women tell me oh, I don't want, I'm like, hello, you've had estrogen in your body all your life. When did it become dangerous? It just makes me crazy. Well, I can't, sometimes with some women, I can't get them. I'm like, please, I don't even prescribe them. I have no vested interest. I'm like begging on my knees. I'm like, please, you have to get these.
If hormones caused cancer, I give thousands of women hormones every single year, right? Thousands, probably close to 2,000. If hormones cause cancer, I should have an astronomical amount of women with breast cancer. I am happy and lucky to say that I diagnose 3 to 7 women a year with breast cancer. The general population is diagnosed 20-ish%, right? So I should have an astronomical more number of women with cancer, right? I will also tell you, I have hundreds of women who have had cancer who are on hormones again after properly being treated, and knock on wood, I have not had a recurrent breast cancer yet, because we fix their terrain. We fix their disease. We fix so it just pisses me off when people say that. I'm like, that's not what I see.
That's not what I see. All right. Some rapid fire questions. Don't think about it. Just answer fast. A conventional endocrinologist hears this episode. Their first pushback.
That your TSH is like the end all be all.
The one gut test every hormone patient should be getting, but most of them are not.
GI map. A full GI map.
The gut health trend that you wish would disappear.
These really bad detox diets, these detox protocols, they all need to go. It's just somebody trying to sell you something that a lot of times makes it worse. Like you're hurting yourself. So any of these gut detox cleanses, they're all BS, in my opinion.
All right, last one in one sentence. Probiotics, overhyped or underused?
I would say it depends on the probiotic and the terrain we're putting it in. I think they're definitely overhyped in people who don't know what they're doing with them. I think they're underutilized in people who really need them.
Tell everyone where to find you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm on social media at modernendocrine_. I have a website, www.modern-endocrine.com. Have a license in 48 states now. So we do virtual clinic in Oklahoma City. Yeah. And so that's where I mostly live, is social media. I try to give people the correct information on social media. My website has all of my information. My book came out last week. You can get it on Amazon. Fix Your Gut, Fix Your Hormones. So just type it in Amazon.
Everybody go get this book ASAP.
Yeah. I really, I wrote this book because I just want people to have a good, something you can go to and get some good information, and just talk to your doctor about that. Like, hey, why don't you get this book? So yeah, that's where you can find me. I'm gonna be screaming from the hill until I die. You can find me. Just go on social media or look on my website.
I love it.
Yeah.
Dr. Cassie Smith, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, that's another episode of the Medical Disruptor, and this is what disruption actually looks like. Not blaming clinicians, not dismissing patients, but exposing the limits of the system and refusing to stop the conversation there. This community exists because too many people were told they were fine when they weren't. Here, you're allowed to ask questions, you're allowed to challenge assumptions, and you don't have to choose between science and skepticism. If you want tools you can actually use, head to medicaldisruptor.com. You can search any topic and find the episode with the information that you need. You'll also find the book, practical PDFs, and my newsletter where we break down what the system does well, where it fails, and how to navigate care without losing your mind. Until then, keep asking questions, keep asking for more, and keep disrupting.